I'm Jason UFC, and today we have a story about Jorge Masvidal claims Gilbert Burns' call-out were a gimmick to gain him more social media followers. Tells Gilbert Burns to keep my name out your mouth. Jorge Masvidal has suffered 3 consecutive losses in the octagon, potentially making a return in, I'm going to say, 2023. The welterweight was aiming to secure a place on the card headlined by the current UFC welterweight champion Leon Edwards' first title defense. I'm going to skip that part. During a recent interview with MMA Fighting, that Masvidal spoke about a potential Gilbert Burns matchup. Okay, no, this is what Masvidal has to say. This fight with Gilbert Burns from my end was okay. He says, I don't understand. From my end was offered but never official. I always shut it down because I couldn't fight. This guy loses his stuff. Like, I promised him a dance. The only dance I promised was March or April, whenever it is that Leon fights. Why does Masvidal have to fight when Leon fights? I don't understand that. I put the word out there. Gilbert says, nah, I don't want to fight. I want to fight in Brazil. Gilbert Burns should probably say that. I don't understand why. Why should Gilbert Burns have to wait till when Leon fights and, miss a fight in his home country because Masvidal doesn't want to fight? Because Leon Edwards isn't. If Leon Edwards was fighting in Brazil, it seems like Masvidal would have took the fight. So I don't understand. I don't understand that last statement. That just doesn't make any sense. Very disappointing to hear Masvidal even talk like that. Now the next thing he says to finish it off is, Masvidal says to Gilbert Burns, "Keep my name out your mouth, bro." Every time Gilbert Burns mentioned my name, he gets a couple more thousand followers. That's a gimmick he's doing. If he wants to fight, we'll fight in March. We'll fight in April. We'll fight in London. There's no fight in London in April. Not at least in the UFC. That's it. I really don't entertain these idiots, man. They can all go F themselves. I'm here for me. Wow. Man, I would say there's a lot going on in the story, but there really isn't. I just gotta be honest, Like I said, I personally don't really know what the hell Jorge Masvidal is even talking about. For some reason, he just wants to get on the same card as Leon Edwards. But it kind of seems like he's just trying to get a title fight. Like, hey, he's lost his last 3 fights. So to me, even if he goes and defeats Gilbert Burns or any welterweight fighter on the same card as Leon Edwards, I don't think that means Jorge Masvidal should get a title shot after that, right? Like, if you lose 3 straight fights, you should have to win 4 straight fights before you get a title shot. It shouldn't be like you lose 3 straight fights, you win 1 fight, and then go right back to like, that doesn't make any sense. So I feel like Jorge Masvidal is just trying to get on the same card as Leon Edwards for 2 reasons. One, like I said, to get a win and then say, hey, I'm going to call out the champion so I could, not have to fight anybody else and just go into a title fight after this 1 win. Or 2, he's trying to get on the card with Leon Edwards so he could basically be the backup fighter, right? If Kamaru Usman can't make it to London, then, and let's say the co-main event, it just happens to be Jorge Masvidal versus Gilbert Burns, it's extremely obvious that the UFC would say, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to have Masvidal step in, and, if Usman couldn't make it, we'll just have Masvidal fight Leon Edwards, which is just completely disgusting. It's actually starting to piss me off. Who knows what's going on with the UFC welterweight division? The UFC is trying to push Chimaev, who missed weight in his last main event fight, missed weight by 7 pounds for the welterweight division. They're trying to put Colby Covington and Chimaev on this card with Leon Edwards headlining versus Kamaru Usman. Jorge Masvidal seems like he's just trying to get on the card so he could have 1 win and then call out the champion, or he could step in as the backup fighter and fight Leon Edwards in London. I mean, this is just crazy. I'm completely disappointed in this situation. I totally agree with Gilbert Burns, man. I don't think Gilbert Burns did anything wrong at all in this situation. You know, he wanted to fight somebody. There's a UFC pay-per-view in Brazil in January. Like I said, if Leon Edwards was headlining that card in January in Brazil, it sounds like Jorge Masvidal would have taken a fight versus Gilbert Burns, right? Or I can't even say that. Maybe he would have taken a fight versus Gilbert Burns, but he definitely wanted to be on that card. So it's kind of disappointing that, you know, he didn't take the fight versus Gilbert Burns in Rio de Janeiro. And Gilbert Burns is actually going to fight Neil Magny. So Gilbert Burns really wanted to fight, and Jorge Masvidal still does not have an opponent for whenever he returns in 2023. Like I said, there's a lot of moving pieces in the UFC welterweight division. We'll see what happens. But let me know your opinion of this story. Do you agree with Gilbert Burns, or do you agree with Jorge Masvidal? Who do you want to see Jorge Masvidal fight next, basically? And when do you want to see him fight next? Do you think Jorge Masvidal should fight Leon Edwards for the undisputed welterweight championship next? Should Jorge Masvidal fight Chimaev? Who else? You know, excuse me. You know, who else should more Jorge Masvidal fight next on the card in London if he's not going to fight Gilbert Burns? But it's a lot of moving pieces in the UFC welterweight division. The UFC is going to have to make a lot of hard decisions in 2023. I'm Jason, UFC. Today we had a story about UFC fighter, UFC welterweight fighter Jorge Masvidal claims Gilbert Burns' call-out were a gimmick to gain himself more social media followers. Quote, "Keep my name out your mouth," is what Jorge Masvidal says to Gilbert Burns after Gilbert Burns has booked a fight versus Neil Magny. I'm Jason. UFC, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the $1 donation button, and please tune in to the next video on this channel. Thanks a million for watching.